Hello and welcome back to Made Possible by Pop Culture, the podcast. This is still season 2. I'm still Danielle Turchiano. And if you're watching on YouTube, this little guy right here is my dog, Archie. And he's with us tonight. Well, he probably won't be with us for the full episode because look at him, he's already pretty sleepy. But he's with us tonight for the podcast that invites guests to share stories from past and present pop culture that has greatly influenced them because of our guest. That is author Jack Jokinen. Now, if you're on Instagram, you probably know who Jack is, or at least you know his dog, Susie, because Jack literally found this dog in his house one morning. He woke up, she was there. He and his family decided to adopt her, and the rest is history. They share their journey and their stories on social media, and he's even turned that into a new children's book titled A Stray Dog for Christmas. Yep, just published. Perfect in time for the holidays. So he's here to talk about the book. He's here to talk about his influences. And maybe the dogs will make an appearance. I don't know. Let's find out. Well, first, Jack, I have to say welcome and thank you for coming on Made Possible by Pop Culture because you kind of lived my dream by just having a random dog show up in your house and now turning it into like, this is not your day-to-day business, but like turning this into, I guess, kind of a business by having the book.
I think my first tweet was, I found a dog in my house with a picture of the dog. My second one was, I'm living every 26-year-old girl's dream.
Okay, well, I'm not 26, but yes, having been on social media as long as I have been personally, but also professionally, like it meant you had to in journalism, especially I started as a freelancer, I had to build my brand that way. It got toxic in a lot of places. And it also just got to be not as fun to self-promote. So then where I would go for fun was basically like dog Instagram. And so I started an Instagram for my last dog who passed away a few years ago. And then I started an Instagram for my new dog. And like neither one of them has gotten me to the level of fame that Susie has gotten you. And I am curious, first of all, if how much of that was something you actively even wanted, but also how did that work having another dog in the house? Because he wasn't getting you famous. Susie got you famous.
Well, Susie didn't get me famous. Susie got herself famous. I say I'm just the guy who holds the leash at this point.
Sure.
Everybody wants Susie. Like there's no one wants me to go do a signing without Susie. Everyone wants Susie. But yeah, like we had George first, and my wife made an Instagram for him. And I don't know, 12 of her friends followed it. Like that was it. She had just posted some pictures. We had him for like a year and a half-ish at that point. And then when Susie happened, which is just how I describe it, Susie happened. We were on our way to the vet and she was like, I'm going to make an Instagram. We're keeping this dog. And I hadn't committed to keeping her yet because I was like, what if there's a chip? And so I was like, all right, well, we got to come up with a name. And so we're both New Yorkers. George's real name is Jorge Posada for Yankees.
Right, because I was going to say the way it's spelled, I thought it was Jorge. And hearing you just say George blew my mind.
Yeah, we say conversationally, we say George.
Okay.
So Jorge Posada. And then Susie is named Susan Putman after the Yankees radio announcer Susan Waldman.
Oh, I would
My
not
Yankees
know.
podcast is called George's Box. Because in 2007, Roger Clemens came out of retirement in the middle of a game, and Susan Waldman, it's just like, if you don't know this, just Google Susan Waldman, Roger Clemens, and she just starts going. She's got this, she's from Massachusetts, she's been in New York for a while, she's got this kind of weird accent that's a combination of the two, and it was just like, oh my God, Roger Clemens is in George's box. He's in George's box. Roger Clemens is a Yankee. Look in the dugout. Jorge Posada is smiling. And so I was just somehow, it's just like the funniest thing to me. And now I sometimes wake up with emails from Susan Waldman just being like, hey, how's Susie doing? Yeah. So it's just weird Yankee fandom.
No, that is nice. And also I don't want to jump the gun and spoil for everybody what you've chosen as your influences. But when I was talking to you about coming on, in the back of my head, I was like, oh, he's obviously going to pick the Yankees. And then now I have to like go research years of Yankee history because I grew up in New York, did not care about baseball. And honestly, when they won the World Series, those were the worst years of my life because of the parade route
Yeah.
messed up my commute. And I was just like, if I have to Google and pretend I know anything about Yankees, we're going to have a rough day.
So that's what also I think is a funny thing about this is you're in LA, I'm in New Jersey, just outside Philly.
Hmm.
We went to rival high schools in New York. We don't know each other besides
True.
this.
I was gonna say I don't know how much of a rival was there when I mean you were there like around the same time I was there. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I graduated '03.
Okay, so I graduated in 2002 and I have no memory of a rivalry because I don't know what sports anyone cared about
It was
because
like girls swimming, if I'm being honest.
okay,
Like
because
that's
that
what
was
it
what I was gonna
was.
say. Like we had a football team. So I went to Stuyvesant, you went to Bronx Science, and our football team mascot was the oh geez, he has okay. Anyone watching on YouTube, he's very proud. I could care less.
Well, I'll
Um,
tell you a funny story about that when you're done about that
no,
sign.
I was just gonna say we had a football team, and their mascot was the peg legs. So that should
Yeah.
tell you a lot about like how good everybody thought these kids who are math and science magnet school kids were going to be at football. And I think that was the mascot across other
Yeah,
sports.
I think it's all the
Well,
sports.
not
Yeah.
all of them. Because I think we had the Turtles or so. I don't know. It was weird. It was literally not every sports team, which is why I'm confused about which ones had it and which ones didn't.
We
Again,
would play a
no one
preseason
cared.
baseball game against each other that like a good amount of people cared about because
Okay,
a lot of people who go to the high school, like the Manhattan kids who went to middle school together, then go to the different high schools.
true.
Then it's like, oh, well, we're playing each other. I'll come there, you come up here, whatever it may be. So whenever we played, we had a little bit of a bigger crowd for the Stuyvesant game.
Okay. That's I didn't go to any of these games. I never cared about sports. And if I'm honest with you, like I did not care about high school. So I very much like stayed in the building for the requisite amount of time I had to be in the building and then was like done. Bye. Anyway, what was the story you were gonna
So
tell me?
that is, I got to Bronx Science in September 1999,
Yeah.
9999. Maybe like a week later, the next week, like there was a break in the day. Everyone had to go outside, and they were renaming 205th Street Bronx High School Science Boulevard. They had a
Oh,
sign on the light on like the post. They did the whole thing where they like pull the sleeve off. Great. About a month later, there's a nor'easter, and my dad drives me to school, and he drops me off at the corner, and that sign is sitting on the ground on the corner. I throw it in his car and I go to school. Had it for years. As a senior, I meet a girl. Her mom's the assistant principal of Bronx Science. She comes home. She comes to my house after,
right.
we're talking for a while, sees this in my room and goes, "What the fuck is that?" And I go, "Oh, am I allowed to curse?"
Yeah, it's the internet.
Okay. And then she goes, "What's that?" I go, "Oh, the sign." She goes, the administration has been trying to figure out what happened to the original sign for 3 years. And I was just like, yeah, no, it's just been here in my room.
Right, right. I
Yeah.
mean, you have to, first of all, you have to figure someone was going to steal it. There's no
Yeah.
way. I don't know why they're still trying to figure it out 3 years later because there's just no way any random New Yorker would have picked it up. Like it would have been used as scrap metal if
Yeah.
not like lovingly kept in a home. So that to me is funny that like they're still looking for it. I will also say I have a friend who I only learned this about her recently, but she used to steal signs and like traffic cones. And I was like, I don't even know how you would find one that you didn't have to like manually rip off. She was like, no, if you look hard enough, they're around. And I was like, okay. So apparently I really missed out by not
Yeah.
caring about high school. I don't
This
know.
is my only sign. It's the only one I have. I'm not a sign klepto.
Okay. It's okay if you are. I'm not judging. I just didn't know how prevalent it was. You also behind you for anyone watching on YouTube can see this. You have the book, wait, is it a stray dog for Christmas?
A
I kept
stray
calling
dog
it
for
a
Christmas.
stray for Christmas, but a stray dog for Christmas. Obviously that's Susie's story.
Yes.
What inspired you to write it now? Because you've had her for a few years.
So I actually wrote it like 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
It's just the process. So Susie happened in December of 2019. So December 14th, my first daughter was born on November 14th. So we got a 1 month old. Um, and when Susie happens, we start going viral immediately.
Yeah.
And as it's going viral and Twitter's going viral, my wife makes the Instagram, and I just start telling people like, you're gonna want to move over to Instagram because I'm going to be tweeting about the Yankees a lot coming up, and you're not going to like it. And people asked as we were going through that morning, some people reached out and were just like, hey, if you can't take that dog, I'll take it. If you're going to keep that dog, you're going to have medical bills. Can I send you a couple bucks?
Oh, that's nice.
So I made a video recapping the morning after we had gotten home. And I said, some people asked one time, here's my Venmo. I've got within a couple of hours, like 15 grand in my Venmo. And I said to my wife on this was a Saturday. By Sunday evening, I said to my wife, this is going to be big. I could just tell like this is something.
Yeah.
I am going to save this dog. I'm going to get an adoption to happen every day for a year. Then I'm going to get an agent. Then I'm going to get a book deal. I'm going to write a book. And people were like, okay, whatever. So like we were at my in-laws' house. My father-in-law wrote Boardwalk Empire. So he wrote the books
You
that
have,
became the
yeah, I
show.
wouldn't say, and so you do have some maybe easier connections in the
No,
library.
so
No,
did
okay.
nothing. So I said, hey, I'm going to do this. And he was like, okay, whatever. So for a year, so the next day after that, I get a picture of a dog and someone goes, hey, this is Tito. I saw you on the news. I adopted Tito because of you. The
Uh-huh.
next day it was Carson, then it was Freckles, then it was Harley Quinn. I have like a dry erase
Yeah,
board with
yeah,
them over there. And I was like, we're getting people to adopt dogs. Like, this is awesome. We're really
yeah.
helping people. And so about 6 months in, we know Susie's going to be okay. The
Mhm.
final total came out to about like $42,000 that people gave us.
Wow.
I know she's going to be okay. Medical bills are all right. I need to give this money away. But when you're like that viral, if you're aware of it,
Hmm.
and or probably like a millennial with self-doubt, it feels like the whole world's watching you and that like you can't fuck this up.
I mean, I honestly would hope that's what it feels like. I personally am such a cynical person that I feel like people don't care that much. And so
Well,
I would rather hear what you just said about like you want to do it right, you want to you have a plan, you want to make sure that if the world is watching you, you don't mess it up. But like I just feel like there's so many people that are like, whatever. Like if
well,
you just said I have to give that money away. And in my head, I was like, a lot of people would not have said that. A lot of people would have been like, great, I can buy myself something fun, or I can save it for when the dog gets older and needs more medical or whatever. Like they would not be thinking about charity.
so do you remember there was a story about a couple who said we ran out of gas, a homeless guy gave us his last $20, then they started GoFundMe, it was like $350,000 for this
Vaguely.
guy, and they were
Yeah.
buying cars going to Vegas, none of it was real.
Yeah.
That got exposed a week before Susie happened.
Okay.
The original interaction between the homeless people and that couple, 2 blocks from my house at the time.
Oh, wow.
So I kept a public Google sheet the first year of every penny that came in and every penny that went out. Susie has her
Yeah.
own bank account.
No, that's nice. That's what people should be doing.
Yeah.
Just that's what I'm saying. I don't feel like a lot of people are, as you
Yeah.
just
No. And
by
because like
reminding me.
you get the like, we were on Inside Edition and they put it
Hmm.
on YouTube. And then there's someone like, this guy broke that dog's leg to like make this story. And like for every 1,000 nice
Yeah,
things,
that's true.
there's one and the one hurts more for some reason. So I was just like, here's what I'm going to do. We're about 95 adoptions that we've inspired. Susie's going to be okay. I say, hey, at 100, I have an announcement. So at 100, I announce I'm going to give away $10,000, $100 at a time. We'll save 100 dogs.
Hmm.
I just made a Google form. You upload the information and, proof of adoption, and I'll Venmo, PayPal, or Zelle you. I'm not downloading Cash App. Like these are the only ways I'll pay you. Or you could select, I don't want the money, keep it rolling.
Oh,
And,
nice.
and so we did 366 adoptions in 366 days because it was a leap year. The
Hmm.
last adoption did really like sometimes we'd have a couple and like, oh, I got 3 today, so I could post one for 3. The last one came in on the last day. We
Hmm.
didn't have one for like a couple of days come in, and I was like, I'm gonna have to offer like $500 for someone to go buy a dog right now. Like go adopt a dog right now. So I
Well, I will
did,
say, I mean, depending on where you live, $100 is great, but it doesn't necessarily cover the
yeah,
whole thing. So
no, not even
I could
close.
see, I was thinking that when you were saying that, I was like, I do wonder, like, it certainly helps, but if it still, if there were still people who had like a barrier to entry.
Yeah. So there was what I said in the first video was, if you're on the fence, I want to soften the
Mm.
landing for you. If you're not even touching the fence, don't do this.
Yeah,
A
yeah,
dog's way more expensive than a
yeah.
drop. But I also told people when I would provide updates of like tag your favorite rescue, because there were some rescues who were like who would just jump in and say like, well, we're doing no fee adoptions.
Mm.
And so then I could promote that like when they were doing that. So we could still get, I'll give you $100 that helps with the dog food, whatever it
Hmm.
is. I'm not making it a free dog, but
Right.
we got a lot of pictures of families. So like we never had a dog. This is our first dog. So they've got 2 kids. Those are now dog people. They'll
Yeah.
have dogs and they'll all adopt, which is really what we wanted to do. And so on the 366th day, on the 1 year anniversary, I did an Instagram Q&A on Susie's Instagram, and people had commented for a while, this should be a children's book, this should be a children's
Yeah.
book. And I knew I was going to do it. But I just had this thing where I wanted to show the world, like there was still good in the world. And this was before 2020, but it started before
Yeah, I was
COVID.
before COVID.
Started before like everything got really crazy. And so it was a little bit of a detachment for some people.
Mm.
So on the 1 year when I was doing the Q&A, people asked, how old is she? How's she doing? I knew someone was going to ask the books question. So I said, yeah, I'd love to. I think I need an agent. A couple
Mm.
people go, I'm an agent. I'm an agent. A woman reached out to me and said, I'm not an agent. I have my own PR firm. I don't want you to hire me. I've been following you all along. Don't want you to get taken advantage of. Because like the first week, like production companies reached out. None that I know, but like, hey, we'll give you $15,000. We make Hallmark movies. Like, can we buy the rights to your story? And I was like, this
Right.
doesn't feel real,
Yeah.
you know? So I just turned down everything. I didn't make a penny from
Yeah.
it. And then this woman said, I used to work at, I forget what publishing house. I signed Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
Mm.
I think you have something. So she helped me just do like the 1 paragraph pitch, and she sent it to agents, and then I interviewed agents. Then for a year, they tried to sell it on the news clippings. No one wanted me to write the book. We'll
Mm.
just do a ghostwriter. You're great on camera. We'll put you out there. No bites for a year. We have our
So,
second daughter.
and wait,
And I,
just when you're doing this, it's always you always wanted it to be a children's book. You always figured there'd be illustrations. How are you handling the illustration part of it, or are you not worried about that?
I'm not where I figure I've got a good story.
Okay.
I've got a good camera presence. I can interview. I've got a social media following. She has a social media
Mm.
following. Someone's going to get behind this.
Hmm.
'Cause there was the option to right away just say, I'm going to self-publish this.
Yeah,
I'll
because
hire
I was gonna say a
my
lot of people are
author.
doing that now,
Yeah,
and that's I'm not saying it's not a way to go, but it is such an upfront, costly way to go
yeah,
that I still very much want to believe in traditional publishing.
yeah. And to make the impact that I'm hoping for this to make, I need the backing of
Mm.
something big, something real. So after about a year or so more, we have our second daughter. I'm on paternity leave. I go, screw it. I can't have less of a book deal than I have right now. I'm just going to take a shot at writing this. And my agent helped, with some just initial editing. Then she went on a podcast
Mm.
about switching careers later in life, and she became an agent at 40.
That's very upsetting that that's considered later in life, but okay.
Yeah. So then she has a lady reach out to her to say, hey, I was on the same podcast as you. I switched careers in my late 30s and became an editor. I work at Source Books, which is part of Penguin Random House. We specialize in children's books. If you ever have anything, send it my way. We'd like to do animals and or
Oh, I
holidays.
love it.
And it was all from like, it went from years of nothing to I wrote this manuscript, had an offer within 2 months.
Yeah.
And then went through the editorial process, which is a lot of Zooms like this of just every word, because there's only
Mm.
750 words. So every word matters.
Yeah.
And like, hey, you said this on this page, so do that. Then here's like 15 illustration styles. Pick 3 you like. Then here's 5 artists for each of those. Narrow it down.
Mm.
And so then we ended up with Wendy Tan. She's a great illustrator. The funny thing about going through all of this, I'm colorblind.
Oh,
So like as I'm providing feedback, I'm asking my wife, I'm like, what is it? Does this look right? It feels like it
right.
looks off. Yeah, and so we're really fortunate to get the opportunity with Source Books. They do all the how to catch the Easter Bunny, how to catch an elf. Like they have a big um series there, and they dominate the children's New York Times bestseller list, especially in the holidays.
Yeah. I mean, they
So
know what they're doing. I think that's the other thing is like when you look at picture books, especially, I feel like is a really hard world because for what they are, they can be so expensive to so many families.
yes,
And I think for most kids, they live or die in the illustration. And so if you don't have, like hearing you say they gave you not just illustrators to choose from, but first they started with illustration styles, like they clearly know what they're doing and they're reaching
yeah.
different demos with each style and then each person. I don't know. I will say that one of the things I loved when I was a kid were those like flat books that are obviously much more expensive to produce and have fallen by the wayside because I feel like no one's doing them anymore. And I had it in my head that I was like, I'm gonna do one, and then was like, how? Nobody wants to produce them because there's no one's buying them. When you go to the library, they don't even let you check them out. So if you're a kid that wants to see them, you have to sit in the library and look at it and then give it back. So like a lot of kids don't even know these things are options. And I'm not an illustrator. So I'm like, so all I'm coming to you with is exactly what you said, those 750 words, which sometimes I look at it and I'm like, anybody could have written this. Like I don't have the story. You have a very specific story.
Yeah, and that's because now I've done a number of signings already, and there are people who come who are like, "Hey, how'd you come up with this?" I'm just lived it. Um, oh well, I've been working on a children's book for like 10 years. What was your process? And I feel awful, and I know I
You
shouldn't,
shouldn't. You
but I'm
shouldn't.
just like, I just kind of lived it, and then I said what happened, and then some lady drew pictures about it. Here we are.
I mean,
Um,
look, you also, and this sounds also not great to anyone who is actively trying, but like it's the IP. You said it a second ago. You had the social media following, you had the presence, the page for Susie, but also for yourself. Like that is IP already that they can look at and say, okay, we can feel like not every single person that follows you will buy this book, but we can feel like we have a built-in audience that's engaged already when we start promoting and marketing and asking people to come to signings.
So I had a meeting early on with Sourcebooks and my agent, and we were on a Zoom like this, and I go, "Can I have a deck. Can I share it?" And they were like, "A deck?" I was like, "Oh, I built a PowerPoint about how I see this all coming together." And they were like, "No one has ever done that like that we've worked with." And it was me breaking down because I work in the tech space. I started off in social media. So I was breaking down, here's Susie's following,
Mhm.
89% women. To a certain extent, it was, that is the target demographic. Those are the people who latch on. Now, if guys right away were like, I love Susie, then yeah, Susie would be drinking, carrying Budweisers around or whatever. But that, realistically,
Right.
it's women. Like I did a reading at Shakespeare and Co. on the Upper West Side.
Mhm.
Not a single child was there. I read to women and their dogs.
Well, what time was it? Because also, sometimes these readings, kids are not, or they're in bed.
It was a Saturday at like noon.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Never mind. I was trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. I mean, I get it because like I've been following the account. I don't have human children. I get it. I am amused by the fact that they're allowed to bring their dogs because I always wondered about that. I mean, obviously your dog is trained and well behaved, but you don't know that all the dogs in the audience will be.
Yeah, well, one of the things I've done with the first like round of signings is try to include a rescue in all of them.
Nice.
So like for that one, we had Animal Lighthouse Rescue and set it up so they could bring two dogs that they flew from Puerto Rico
Wow.
just to try to find them homes. Same thing with some of the ones I've done in Philly.
Mm.
And this way I find out who the dogs are, and you follow us, so you've seen I make like a video where I make
Mhm.
jokes about how like great these dogs are, to just try to like get people in. Because my biggest like overarching thing of this whole story is I for I accidentally left my door open in a
Yeah.
major city with my wife and 1 month
I
old
mean,
there.
I wasn't going to harp on that because it's been 4 years,
It could have gone
but
so
it could
bad.
have. Right. And like that's the thing that as a woman living alone, like my dad, when I was a kid, would, before they would leave the house, scream, make sure the windows are locked, make sure the doors are locked, don't answer the buzzer. We lived in a doorman building, but like don't answer the buzzer. Like all of this stuff.
Yeah.
We see it on TV when we see characters that have no window treatments or whatever. Everyone's always making fun of like, how can they live like that? But when I saw your story, I was like, yes, that went through my mind. Absolutely. Like it could have gone so terribly, but also like in a way, don't we want to live in a world where like this can happen, where we don't
Yeah.
have to be petrified and then like, look, something good came out of this. Like you were rewarded for
A couple
having
of
that
like great
mistake.
things. The guy who closed the door, Steve, great guy. He was a neighbor I'd never met. He lives in Minneapolis now.
Hmm.
Um, he had battled addiction like a lot of people had. He told me when I met him, if this was 2 years earlier, this is a lot different for you
Yeah.
because he wouldn't have just closed that door. And I brought him on the news with me when I was like, "Hey, you want to come? I'm going to be on NBC."
Yeah.
His parents see what he's doing because the addiction does damage to the relationship. Now you do this good thing. Now I see them on Facebook. They're flying back and forth to see each other. Like it's awesome. And so I just took it as like as an opportunity to try to make a positive impact and not even realize like not my daughters don't fully understand what's going on.
Well, they're still young. So,
Yes, but they will know like Joey is in the book. Joey will always have this book will be around for forever
mhm.
in some way because it's a Christmas book. So it'll come around every year and she'll always have that. And there was a picture of Layla in there because, she wasn't born when this happened. So I wanted to give them that because, like I said, my father-in-law wrote Boardwalk Empire when HBO then like
Mhm.
dramatized it. There's a character named after everyone in my wife's family. So
Yeah.
like my wife had polio. When she starts a new job, that is like her, what's your fun fact?
Oh
She's like, oh,
God.
I had a character named after me on Boardwalk Empire. And they're like, which one? She's like the little girl with polio. So, and I wanted to give them that. And then by having that, when it's like, oh, well, how did you end up in a book?
Hmm.
There's a letter from me to them at the end that talks about what happened. And so they'll just know, like, regardless, I get hit by a car tomorrow. They know their dad was a good person, tried hard, worked hard, and achieved something that he shouldn't have. Like the odds of me writing a children's book on December 13th of 2019, if you
Hmm.
told me you're going to write a children's book, I would have laughed so hard in your face
Hmm.
because it wasn't on my radar
Right.
as like a thing. And now, they have these memories, with the dogs. And I hope it stays with them for forever. And there's always the opportunity if, we're getting into the season of people buying the book,
Yeah.
there may be more, so we'll see.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because I mean, like, it's the story, like the quote unquote, the story of what happened on the day. But there have been so many adventures since then. Like, and you don't have to tell true stories. Like, there could be a franchise of this dog's adventures that are just fun little stories that little kids want to read about and that have like lessons in there about different things. Because I am very aware of that's the other part of children's books. They all have to have some sort of lesson. So
Yep.
you never know. I mean, and especially, you have two dogs now, you have kids, but like who knows what will happen in the future? More animals, more kids, whatever. Whole
No
empire.
more kids. No more
No more
kids.
kids. Okay.
Daycare's too much.
Sorry.
No,
All
I'm
right.
kidding.
That's listen, you're talking to somebody who has no human children because I said that. I mean, I don't love children when they get to a certain age. So that was a big part of it. I was like, what do I do with you at that age? I can't give you away. But also, I mean, it's entirely true that it's like, I don't think I could afford to have children. I mean, this
But
is what
plus,
we
you
have
spread
done.
yourself out. I always wanted two kids. I was like, I think anything more than that, and I'm one of three kids. My wife is one of three kids. Anything more than that, there's just not enough of me to go
Yeah,
around to still have the time for some me stuff, which
sure.
at
Yeah.
this point, the me stuff is doing the book right now. But I like to always have a side thing aside from like my real career where
Mm.
I, am doing something, being challenged in some way.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. I do want to talk about your influences, and I'm going to set this up for the audience and say, I don't think that anybody should assume these things that we're going to talk about in the past influence this children's book because I don't want to make it sound like they're more serious or dark in any way, but like I was trying to see if there could be a through line thread, and I didn't think there would be, but you could correct me if I'm wrong. Um, but I do want you to be the one to set up what you chose for the past, because as I always like to say, like your passion for it is going to make it sound so much better than if I am just like giving a, Webster Dictionary defines
Have
definition.
you noticed what is directly behind my head yet?
Well, your head is blocking it, so no. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. He's got a wrestling belt, and
M-
it's too far away for me to read what it says.
That is
I'm
the
not wearing my.
WWF Winged Eagle title that Hulk Hogan had through Bret Hart, early 90s. So my pop culture influence from yesteryear, which I still like today, is professional wrestling. I'm born in 1985. I was a 5-year-old boy. Hulk Hogan was everywhere. Um, and then there were times when you go kind of in and out of wrestling.
Sure.
And when we were, because we're about the same age,
Yeah,
we're
but
about the
we
same
had
place.
you had a I can already tell you had a very different experience with wrestling than I did. So you go ahead.
I'm one of those people who was like, when I was a little boy, he got sent to the principal's office for doing the suck it and, and stone cold stunning each other and all of those things. That I just like, I still today watch. I went to WrestleMania. I went to
Oh,
6 events
nice.
for WrestleMania this year because it was here in Philly, and I'm now at a point where I can afford to do that. And like I did that for 5-year-old me is what I kept saying.
Right. I mean, I think that, first of all, the fact that it still holds up to you, even though, and this is something I wanted to talk about from the past perspective, but like, even though at this point in your life, you certainly know this is scripted. But when you're talking about like 5-year-old you or getting sent to the principal I'm assuming you're not aware that it's not real at that point.
So I learned that professional wrestling is predetermined at the 1992 Royal Rumble. It
Uh-oh.
was held in Knickerbocker Arena in Albany, New York, the Sunday of Martin Luther King Day weekend. As a 6-year old, hadn't turned 7 yet,
Yeah.
I see on TV that it's in Albany, New York.
Hmm.
I live in New York. That's New York. I don't know how far that is. Convince my dad that we should go. So he gets me ticket, me, him, his friend, and his friend's son. They have a friend who works for WWF at the time in production. So we don't have like great seats. We're not like ringside or anything, but this is the 1992 Royal Rumble is considered amongst wrestling to be the greatest Royal Rumble of all time. My dad is trying to convince me that wrestling is predetermined. He's saying,
Oh.
I say predetermined
No,
out of
but
respect.
that's like the let's tell my kid Santa's not real. That's kind of mean. He's
So
telling him
my
it's not real.
dad at the 1992 Royal Rumble, when I was convinced Hulk Hogan was going to win his third straight Royal Rumble, my dad said, no, Ric Flair's going to win it because my friend told me. And
Oh
I said, no,
no.
no, no, you're wrong. And then as we sat there and watched the matches before they would start, my dad would go, oh, it's going to be this guy's going to win. Oh, it's going to be they're going to win, but it's a disqualification. So the titles don't change hands. So then people next to us go, wait, how are you picking it? He goes, my dad starts betting beers against the people next to us.
Well, if he already knew because his friend told him,
He's
that's
winning.
kind
He's
of
got a piece of
unfair.
paper that has
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
results. So he's just like, oh, it's this guy. Boom. Then they go get him a beer. Then he drove home from Albany. Whole other
I
situation.
mean, don't say that publicly, but okay.
But
Wait now.
that's how I learned that professional wrestling was not real.
Okay.
And then, when we were in high school or, high school
Yeah.
six through like high school where, it's considered the attitude era, Stone
Right,
Cold
because
Steve
honestly, you were
Austin,
still
whatever.
watching it, so you obviously didn't care that it wasn't real. You still were enjoying
Yes.
whatever you were watching.
The Attitude Era kicked off with Vince McMahon, and I'm going to talk about Vince McMahon sometimes in nice ways, so I'll just get on the record. What he's accused of doing, he should be put under the prison if it's
Yeah.
true. Seems like it is. Terrible person in real life.
Right. But we didn't know that then.
Yeah.
So you can talk about it in terms of like if you say something like, "Oh, well, then I was rooting for him when he was in his feud or whatever." Like we get it because it was
Well,
again that was also scripted. Like we don't, you know,
yeah.
we don't have to draw in the things that we didn't know in hindsight. I think
Yeah.
it's unfair to be like, I can't. say I admittedly like liked him back then because of what I know now. Like there are
Yeah.
definitely people that I liked back then that I
Yeah.
would never have liked if I had known, but we're not
Yeah.
not
I
my
didn't just watch the Netflix thing and be like, you know what? I
yeah,
really
yeah.
like this guy.
Well, right,
Um,
right. But when
but
you're, 12, no one knew.
so the Attitude Era started with Vince McMahon just on camera saying, there are no good guys and no bad guys. There are just guys. We are here to entertain. And it was because in New Jersey was taxing the WWF as if it was a real sports
Right.
organization and not a touring theatrical organization. So they went on record for that. And then Christy Todd Whitman brought WWF back to New Jersey up in the Meadowlands. And so at that point, wrestling is so big and it's predetermined. And I'm almost 40 years old and I know it's predetermined. But what if? What if something happens that isn't supposed to?
Oh,
Because
sure.
these are real people. They're
Right.
real
And
people
things
who have
go
real
wrong.
contracts. They have real contracts. They have real disputes with their bosses. Now there's another company, AEW. So
Yeah.
now that you have two, like, and back then it was WCW and WWF, you could guys could pop up on other shows. You don't know when their contract's up. It's not a public thing. And so there's always a little bit
Hmm.
when they're doing it good. And right now, professional wrestling is better than it's ever been.
Are you
The
saying right
story
now today, or are you talking about like
right
back?
now,
Okay.
today, like the Attitude Era was the best. Today is now considered the best.
Hmm.
But to me, it was always if you can tell someone that this is fake,
Yeah.
but I'm still going to make you feel like it's real. It is so captivating. It was so interesting to me. And it's kind of driven so much of what I've done, like in life and
Mm.
professionally. And I always took the idea that it doesn't matter what you say, it matters how you make people feel.
Yeah.
Now, imagine if the thing that you're saying and your intentions are actually good, how far you can go with that. If you make people feel good while doing good, you can get a children's book.
Right.
So that kind of like has played into like everything I've done.
It's just interesting hearing you say that because talking about the Attitude Era specifically, like the things that I remember, and I was not a diehard fan, I barely watched it, but my friends that watched it, the things that I remember them talking about were usually the darker things, were the feuds, were the when they got to the Undertaker and his whole like satanic, it wasn't
The
real, but
ministry.
we have dark, right? So like all of that, and so like hearing you talk about the goodness. Are you talking about the storytelling itself, or
Yes.
or are you talking about like certain characters? I'm going to call them characters, which is unfair, but certain
They
wrestlers.
are characters.
Yeah,
They
but I
are.
mean, I also know it's not the same as when I talk about like a character on a TV show. So, which were there certain wrestler personas, let's say, that you felt like you mentioned Hulk already, but like just maybe you were
Also a terrible person.
yeah, but like
Um,
again, he was the wrestling persona that you're
yeah.
interested
Yeah.
in.
Eat your
Different.
vitamins, say your prayers. You're gonna rip your shirt off.
So you
But
that's what I'm trying to ask is you are attaching yourself more to like the quote again, no good guys or bad guys, but like the quote unquote like slightly better ones.
so when I was really young, 5, 6, Hulk Hogan, the good guys, always the good guys. Then you get into the Attitude Era, and what was interesting there was it kind of switched. Like
Mm,
Stone Cold Steve Austin was chugging beers, driving stuff while chugging beers,
mm,
doing everything terrible. But everyone wants to punch their boss. And so people got on that side. People love the NWO in WCW. They're the
yeah.
bad guys. Degeneration X, DX was just telling people, suck it, trying to get women to flash from the crowd. They were bad guys, but they were the good guys.
Mm,
And it just was so interesting that they could control people like that. And now, like, the biggest movie star in the world is The Rock.
right.
And everybody calls him The Rock. No one calls Meryl Streep by her first role. He's
Well, that's true. I mean, I just think I mean, there's still such a contingent of the audience, I think, of wrestling fans that, as I just said, I don't want to call them characters the way that I call TV characters characters. Like, we still say they're different things. So, like, yeah, it was his first role, but in a different way. And like he wore that persona as a person. Like you didn't, it was, I feel like the distinction between wrestler and like person behind whatever the wrestler persona is not as thick a line, especially back then, as like
No,
actor versus role. Because A, you see the actors in multiple roles, so you can draw the line clearer of like that's not the same person, but also you're seeing them give more interviews as themselves, so you're able to see who they are. Whereas with wrestling, I feel like, and maybe this was just because I didn't run in the circle that like read all the magazines for wrestling, but I felt like that they were still trying to keep that persona no matter
yeah.
what. Like it
The
helps the kids that still believe.
the biggest stars, like Stone Cold Steve Austin says, Stone Cold Steve Austin is me, Steve Williams, turned up to 11.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. I live every day at a 5. I like hunting. I like drinking beers. I've been in bar fights. Can't do that all the time. Once that red light goes on, we're up to 11. And even like I listen to wrestling. I know a lot about wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
When this was happening during this time, The Rock would drive from town to town, like as they finished, they got to get to the next town. He would drive by himself in a rented Cadillac, getting his phone calls done that he had to get done with the dome light on. Because if you saw The Rock, he wanted to make sure you saw The Rock. Like
Uh,
just, and that is Dwayne Johnson going
yeah.
from one day of work to the next. He wanted you to see The Rock. And like Rowdy Piper said, at one point, he goes, if I go to the supermarket, I'm still Rowdy Piper.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise. He's
Right.
not whoever he just played. So it is this kind of like weird thing. And guys used to in the 70s and stuff get like stabbed or shot because of the characters they played. So I'm glad it doesn't do that. But even if you look at, what's going on like in kind of like today's wrestling, like The Rock, I went to WrestleMania because The Rock was there.
Mm-hmm.
The Rock's going to wrestle. Great. I'm going to be there. Like, have to be there. And then you just like, you never know what's going to happen. I came home. My wife is like, can we watch the last match? And you just tell me everything you were feeling while you were watching
Oh,
this. And I did. I went through and she was like, when the Undertaker's gong hit, what happened? I was like, I went fucking banana sandwich. And she goes, what does that even mean? I go,
right.
I don't know, but that's what I felt,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Well, because I think also at that point, like these are people you've watched growing up
Yeah.
and you have this different understanding, but also the fact that they would even, someone like The Rock doesn't have to come back and do this now. The fact that like
Yeah.
he was willing to come back and do this now.
Well, he got $30 million.
Sure, but does he need it? He has such an empire from his
Yeah.
like he doesn't even need the 30 million, which is a crazy thing to say, but like there has to be a part of him. I mean, that was so ingrained in his culture and his family growing up that I'm sure he would have come back if it wasn't maybe 30 million, but there are people like him who wouldn't because they don't need to. And so I think the fact that like it can be kept going, I don't want this to sound sappy and I don't want this to sound disparaging, but like I sort of used to equate it to like soap operas in a way, in the
Yes.
sense of like it's not the theatricality, but just in the devotion of the fans and also some of the things that you were talking about a second ago, get people getting stabbed or shot. Like a lot of those soap opera villains used to get smacked in not stabbed, but smacked in the face in supermarkets because people weren't separating them this
Yeah.
way. And so when I think about that, I'm like, those people have been on for years or they leave and they come back. And so I do see, I feel like the through line for why you might do that is the love that you're shown by these fans that are clearly
Yeah.
with you all this time.
Well,
But I'm fascinated by this because this is so much more physical. And so
yeah.
for
And well,
someone like
like,
The Rock to come back and wrestle now, like you're also kind of showing us like you still got it.
yeah. And like The Rock has said, I've been in the biggest movies,
Right.
but there's only the crew there when I'm filming it. But
Mm.
once you said, can you smell what The Rock is cooking? 70,000 people are screaming. And that's got to be the greatest drug in the world. So there is nothing like John Cena comes back
Hmm.
because it doesn't matter how big I get somewhere else. There's no feeling like imagine when you entered a room, they played a song,
Mm.
and when the song started, everyone knew you were coming and they were pumped for it. Like it's so
Yeah.
I don't know. I joke around. I say professional wrestling is America's greatest natural export. It's just like I think it's the coolest thing. Because it makes people who know. And now I'm I'm 39 years old, and sometimes I tell people, "Oh yeah, no, I watch wrestling. I know everything
Yeah.
about wrestling." It's like it's a weird thing about me. And they'll be like, well, it's fake, right? And there's two responses to that. One is, do
39.
you think I think that's, you think I'm the kind of psycho who's like, yeah, they're going to throw each other off the cell and that's real? Like, no, you should put me in prison. But then normally my answer is, I go, what's your favorite TV show? And they're Breaking Bad. I go, great. Breaking Bad went 7 seasons. My
Right.
favorite show
Oh,
has been going since the 60s. They're both fake.
yeah.
So the soap opera is like a great, it's men's soap operas.
Yeah. I mean, I also feel like that when you put it in that perspective of it's been going for so long, that to me feels almost daunting. Like you have to really love something to stick with. I mean, not you weren't alive in the 60s, but like to stick with it as long as you have, like that I think says a lot about what it's doing, but I think it also says about a lot about you. And like I'm sure there were parts,
It
years.
goes in lulls. So
Yeah,
like
I would say there are
I'm
places where you probably didn't love it as much, but you either stuck with it or came back to it.
yeah, like I'm 5, love wrestling. Wrestling moves to cable TV. I lived on City Island. You probably know what it is, but other people don't. A mile and a half by half mile island in Long Island Sound. We didn't have cable when everyone else had cable because we're an island. They just couldn't get cable there. So I grew up without cable. Eventually we got cable. My parents just
I
didn't
mean,
get
you
it.
said
So
I didn't have cable either, but that was just because my parents didn't want me to watch that much TV. And we could have,
yeah, well,
but
that's
like,
what it turned
you said
into
it like it
eventually.
was like weird. I'm like, I don't know. There are a lot of us that didn't have cable. It's fine, whatever.
A lot of people think it's weird that I didn't have cable. So I'm glad someone else didn't. And so like I kind of got a little bit out of it, or I'd go to friends' house, we'd watch the pay-per-views in like, parts of high school. But then girls don't want to watch wrestling.
Well, so but there are female wrestlers. And I did have friends that were like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like they're athletic. I mean, granted, during the Attitude Era, it was so sexualized that a lot of my
Yeah.
female friends were like, what is this? This is like ridiculous. But I would actually think that then some of my male friends loved it for the same reason that the girls hated it.
A pay-per-view was coming on.
Oh,
The
right.
first thing would come up, TV 14, and then you looked for that letter N because
Mm.
then you were going to see someone's boobs. And
Hmm.
you're 14 and you're about to see boobs, and this is awesome. And that's like, it was when you're that age, it's like the
Yeah.
coolest thing. So then, like, I get to college. I'm not watching wrestling. I
Okay.
don't know what's going on. Someone does say to me at one point, "Hey, Survivor Series is at the arena here in Philly. You want to go?" Sure. What, $50, whatever. Sure, go. I don't know who anyone is, but like, cool
Yeah.
energy. I become president of my frat.
Okay.
One day, people come downstairs. They go, "What are you watching?" I go, "Oh, it's the Royal Rumble." They go, "Isn't that a pay-per-view?" I go, "Yeah, I'm the president. I can buy whatever I want. I want to watch wrestling. The Royal Rumble's my favorite
Are you
thing."
just watching it by yourself though? You weren't even like
Oh
having
no,
a
then
party for
because
it?
you put it on in the living room,
Yeah.
50 people by the end of it. Everyone
Okay.
comes
Yeah.
in.
Okay, good.
Everyone comes
But
back
I
to
was like, it's a
wrestling.
little sad if it was just you.
No, I knew I didn't have to tell anyone. You just put
Got
it
it.
on. People go, "What's that?" It's kind of for some people, it's a car accident. You want to see what happened.
Right.
And then, then I get out into like the real one. There'd be the occasional things that I would hear, like Shawn Michaels' career's on the line. It's going to be his last match. Like I know it's going to be, so I'm going to find a way to pirate that or whatever it is. But then they came out February 1st, 2012 with the WWE Network. I bought it the first day, and now I had access to every pay-per-view that ever happened and every pay-per-view that's going to happen. It's now moved to Peacock, but
Yeah.
I've had the WWE Network since it first launched. I was able to catch up on what's going on. I can watch every pay-per-view. I get it for free because I have like Comcast internet.
Oh,
So
right.
like I
Yeah.
get Peacock for free. But it was $10 a month
Yeah, but this
instead
could
of
be,
60 every month for a pay-per-view.
oh, okay. So, I mean, look, it's a great deal, but it also, again, I don't want to say the word daunting again, but it does really sound like this could be your whole life. Like there's so much of it to watch.
My
Especially if
wife
you're like
jokes
you have access to the history, right? You just said you have access to all the old pay-per-views.
everything that's happened.
So I like I feel I would be obsessive. I would be like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to binge all of this. And I would just like be there for months on end and do nothing else.
There's times when I've done that. Like I watch every pay-per-view now. And so there is a stretch called WrestleMania season.
Yeah.
Starts with the Royal Rumble, goes through WrestleMania. Then there's kind of a little bit of a lull for a month. Then it's SummerSlam. And right now we're in kind of a lull. So I'll check out what's going on, but like I don't have to be in front of my TV for the smaller pay-per-views. But like I'll catch up on what happened. And honestly, most of the time, I don't care who wins. I don't care who the champion is. I'm not a Cody Rhodes fan or a Roman Reigns fan. I'm a not even a Triple H fan. I'm a Paul Levesque fan, the real man who's running the company and making the stories. That's all I care about is tell me a good story. I have this belt just because I ran out of like tchotchkes to buy for myself for different like things. So my one year, my wife was like, "You're difficult to shop for. What do you want for Christmas?" And I go, "Here's a link. You can get this for $150 from India." And I just sit there and show. I didn't bring that to WrestleMania. I'm not a psycho. Like there are guys walking around with two belts. I'm like, that's a workout. What are you doing? I just enjoy the show. And then when you're there live in person, it's the same as being at a Broadway show. Because when it goes to commercial and you're watching on TV, all the lights go off around the ring, and then the guys just get up and walk away.
Right, of course, because
and then it's right back, and you see them. You see them changing out like this set. They're bringing in props. They're changing the mat. Like you're just watching them turn over. You realize you're not even at wrestling. You're at a TV show about wrestling.
Yeah, because I was gonna say you don't see that in Broadway. The curtain closes, all that shit happens behind the screen, behind the scenes. But yeah, I mean, I guess I thought you were gonna equate it to like a concert. Because of the things that you said a minute ago about
that's probably a better comparison
and whatever, and also because I know you wanted to talk about some modern influences that were musicians, but I hear you talk about like the storytelling. To me, that is the through line that I was looking for this whole time. I feel like that's what you're appreciating from when you were younger to now to even your own in your book. At what point did you start to notice that that's what you were looking for in these like pop culture moments that you're most interested in?
It's honestly probably like storytelling to me is I've always been a funny guy. I was always a funny kid. That's how I felt like people liked me. And so I thought being able to be funny is great if you're quick-witted, which I am, but it's better if you can like tell a story and engage people. And so I graduated college in 2008, no jobs in the world. So as I start my career, I realized talking is going to be a part of my career. And I worked for a company that made the first consumer-facing Facebook applications. So 2009, 2010, I'm meeting with high-up people at companies because they're just like, what is this Facebook thing? Please save my career. I've been working in marketing for 30 years and I have no idea what's happening. And I wanted to be a good presenter. I wanted to be comfortable talking to C-level people. So, you know Toastmasters, right?
Yeah.
I didn't want to do that. I started doing stand-up comedy. I started going to open mics. So like there's a podcast like Are You Garbage?
Yeah.
Those guys hosted the first show I went on. The guy who produces all Shane Gillis's stuff at one point after a show was like, "Hey man, we're making some YouTube videos. Like you should go." And I was like, "YouTube videos? What the fuck is that?" So I'm not saying I would have been Shane Gillis. I'm just saying I'm dumb. And so I always thought it was important to be able to tell a story, weave things together. I do believe like not in a like you manifest it. I believe things are connected. Like I have the book because Susie happened. I had the following because I worked at Barstool Sports. From working at Barstool Sports, Pat McAfee is up at 4 a.m. going to college game day when I find a dog in my house. And all that ties back to like doing stand-up got me the opportunity at Barstool. So, telling that story through and stringing things together, I think is important. It makes you more interesting. And then when it came to like the children's book, one of the things as you're thinking about doing this for a while, because even when they're like, you're not going to write this, you're still thinking like, well, what if I have to break glass in case of emergency? I've got 2 young kids. I read a lot of children's books.
Yeah.
There are some really good ones. Some of them really suck. And it's just like, this is a bad story. It goes nowhere, and so that was the thing for me. I was like, I have to make this something I like. And so kind of one of the funny things about it is I wrote it like 2.5 years ago.
Mhm.
Then you do all the art stuff and all the media, like planning, and the marketing spend
Right.
starts in November, and all this stuff that we're going through, that by the time the book came out, I forgot people had to like what I wrote. And then people like got it delivered and they were like, "Oh my God, you did such a good job." My wife's friends are texting like, "I can't believe I'm crying at a book jack."
Oh,
And I was just like, "Oh yeah, I forgot." Like I kind of got lost in the sauce of everything else you had to do. So, storytelling's always been important to me. I think the most valuable thing we have is time. And
mm,
so if I'm going to get your time to listen to me talk, I'm going to give you a good story. I'm going to
yeah.
make it worth your while.
I mean, honestly, I think that's what everybody should feel. Again, like going back to what you said earlier, where I was like, oh, everyone should feel that way, but I'm cynical and I don't think they do. I mean, I come from the world of entertainment journalism. I come from specifically television journalism. I don't want to disparage people's work. I know people put a lot of time and effort into their work, but there are so many shows that feel like they exist just because someone threw money at something and said,
Yeah.
like, we can. And it doesn't feel like what you're talking about. Like we have an actual story to tell and we should. So it's nice. It's kind of nice when I hear people reinforce my own beliefs, which sounds terrible because like we should all want to change and grow, but it's true. So I'm going to say it. I like to hear my own stuff parroted back, and the fact that like, yeah, you should value people's time. There should be a reason we're doing all of this.
Yeah, in the letter that I got to write to my daughters, like at the back of the book, I say, to me, the problem is not really figuring out what's right and wrong. You know right from wrong.
Mm.
The issue is making the decision to do right when wrong is easier, when wrong benefits you more, and that's where people get lost. If you look at, this is out after the election, political climate, there are people who are just doing wrong to do wrong
Right.
because it benefits them. They know what's going. They went to Harvard and Yale, like they know
Right.
what they're doing. So, I think if you just, and maybe I am idealistic, maybe at some point this will bite me in the ass, but I've just always tried to go about doing things the right way. And there are probably shortcuts. There are ways, like I could have made more money if I self-published this a month after it
Mm.
happened,
I
but
you
I
could have
would have
made
made
more
more
money.
money in that short
Yeah.
period compared to kind of building a legacy
Well, that's what I
almost.
mean. Like maybe you would have made more for that, but like who knows if it would have been that and then nothing after it.
Exactly. And so I'm the kind of person who said, I'm playing with house money. I'm not even supposed to be here. So let's try to make the most of it. Let's work as hard as we can. My editor will send me stuff and say, "Hey, can you get this back to us in 2 weeks?" I get it back in 2 hours
Jesus.
because, like, this is just, I value that everyone has given me their time. Like
Yeah.
I say, my team, which it seemed a lot cooler when you're watching Entourage to be able to say my team. When I actually have to say it now, I
I
feel
don't
like it.
know that it seemed cooler on Entourage. I don't think, I mean, we probably had different views of Entourage. I did not find them cool, but that's because it was such a misogynistic show.
Yeah.
And like,
Uh, you
I
know,
knew as somebody who was trying to come into Hollywood, I was like, oh, good, that's what I'm facing. Great.
so probably a bad comparison, but
Okay. I knew what you meant.
my team, I respond to everything quickly. Nothing falls through the cracks. I ask a lot of questions, even down to I they frequently tell me you ask questions that no one has asked before. I
Hmm.
said, okay, I have to do signings. Is there a marker I should use? Can we keep in mind I'm left-handed, so I'm worried about it
Oh,
smearing?
yeah,
And
yeah.
they're just like, no one has ever thought of that we've worked with. I was all right. I'll just go to Staples and get a bunch of
Yeah, but
Sharpies.
also that
Like,
worries me. Like they're being paid to think of those things. Why are they not thinking of these things?
I don't know. The bookstores always have Sharpies, but
Yeah.
also the same thing. I have my own Sharpies that I bring just in case. I have my stamp. Susie's paw is a stamp, so she does
Oh,
autographs. Um, and as I've done some of these things, the bookstores, wherever they tell me, they're like, "You're so low maintenance." I'm like, "I'm just a dude who wrote a kid's book. I show up with 2 bottles of water, one for me, one for Susie.
yeah.
I have a travel water bowl for her that like
Yep.
folds up. I have a towel for her. I have a lint roller for me because she sheds,
Yeah.
and And that's I have my Sharpies and my stamp. That's all I need. Just tell me where to sit, and I'll sit there. I'll stand there. I'll talk to people for hours. I can't believe people are coming to see me. It's an
Yeah.
incredible honor. It's incredibly humbling. I just try to show that appreciation to everybody who supports me like in any way, including you. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for coming on. I mean, I know we're like running out of time, but do you still want to talk about your modern
Yeah,
influences?
yeah.
Because I was like, I don't want to lose that part, but
No,
we're going long. I feel bad. I've been going long with a lot of people lately because like the conversations are good. So I just want to
yeah.
keep going.
Hey, I'd rather it be this than 20 minutes in. You're like, all right, that's a good one. We'll get out
No,
of
no,
here.
no. I try. I mean, listen, I'll be honest, I've had a few, and people who have listened probably can tell which ones I'm talking about, like where I had trouble getting the stories
Yeah.
out of people. Like it didn't seem like the thing that they chose to talk about, they really had anything to say. And so I was like, ooh, so I try to prep them better coming in, which, as you spoke of, teams can be hit or miss because sometimes someone's team doesn't fully relay the information I provided. Whatever, it's a learning curve. But no, I mean, I try to keep it, 20 minutes is not I don't feel like you get anything out of
Yeah.
the
Oh, no.
multiple things that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to ask you to set it up since I have no segue, but to set up what you chose for the modern influence.
My modern influence right now is female entertainers, mostly musicians. Obviously, like Taylor Swift for the past like couple of years. Beyonce. My wife is a huge Beyonce fan. I've seen Beyonce. None of her friends are, so I've seen Beyonce
Whoa.
in concert a lot of times. And uh, I knew my daughters would listen to Beyonce. She was going to be there, so
Yeah.
I picked Taylor Swift for my girls because I knew she had a big like catalog, kind of different styles. So at least I was trying to put off Frozen as long as I could. I didn't want to listen to a lot of Let It Go.
All
And
right.
now my wife didn't like Taylor Swift. My wife's obsessed with Taylor Swift now. She was like, "Why are you doing this, Taylor Swift?" Everything about her follows everything. New Heights podcast. We live close to the Kelseys.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah. So,
Well, this is what's
um,
interesting though, because, and I don't mean to make this sound like only women like Taylor Swift, but when you had said that you're picking these artists, I was curious how much of the influence was, well, you're raising young girls and these are artists that you want them to listen to because A, they have something to say in their music, B, they are controlling the way that they're saying it in a way that the musicians we listened to growing up maybe couldn't or didn't want to. And so the image that they're putting out is, I think, a stronger one, but like also maybe a little bit more healthy for young children
yes.
listening.
So it's the fact that like, listen, I am a white guy at the worst time in the world to be a white guy, and it's still so fucking easy. Like, it's so easy to be a white guy.
Always going to be easy. That's the
It's
thing.
always going to
Like
be. You pick any time.
yeah,
Hey, what do you want to be? I'll be the white guy.
yeah,
But so to see these women build their careers. So if we're talking Taylor Swift and Beyonce, the careers that they've built, and there are people who will throw out like little things here or there to try to tear them down. Like we have no idea what their day to day is like.
right.
And the way they have changed touring, music in general, then movies, and getting their concerts into movie theaters. And
Yeah,
like I took my wife to go see the Beyonce movie the night it opened. I went to Barbie the night it opened. Like I'm a
yeah.
girl dad. And so I
Wait, you didn't take
appreciate.
your kids though, right? They were too young still.
No, it was
Okay.
date night.
Okay. Well,
So
I don't know. Everyone has different rules around like how
they
old you
have
can
they
see
have
for
seen
things.
it. They've
Okay.
seen Barbie a bunch of times. They love the Ken song. They
Yeah.
were both Barbie last year for Halloween,
How
and
cute.
I was Mojo Dojo Casa Ken. I had a shirt
Oof.
that looked like I had a six pack, and my wife's like faux fur coat on. Um, but so they've done like tremendous things,
Yeah.
and they continue to innovate. They're both billionaires, which is like, you know, I don't love billionaires, but like, hey, good for you guys. But then like lately, I've really gone into like Chapel Roan and Sabrina Carpenter because if you think about the age we are,
Hmm.
and me being a white guy, fucking love Eminem.
Yeah.
Loved Eminem. I
Yeah.
know
So did
every
I.
word to every song, the first three albums.
Just
But
oh, I'm at top of you. I can still do it, but okay.
it was
Maybe that's bad. Maybe I shouldn't. But here we are.
everything he said. Like so many of his things were so witty.
Yeah.
Hey, it's me, Versace. Whoops, somebody shot me. And I was just checking the mail. Get it?
So
Checking the
that's what
mail.
I was going to ask you too about, like, when you're picking these women, how much of it is the actual the art that they're putting out, the music? Because one of the conversations I had recently with someone on this podcast was that he was struggling to feel like a song would be an inspiration or an influence, but like the person and their process and their trajectory was what it was, because of things like what you just said, because of like the creativity, the
Yeah.
brains that they have in order to be able to do what they do.
And they write their own songs. So you think about like my kind of through line of like witty lyrics is like Eminem, Jay-Z, then like Young Money, like
Mm.
they like Lil Wayne and Drake had like some great like rhyme schemes. But then now you have these women who are speaking in a sexual way that isn't graphic, and it kind of
Mhm.
leaves some of the imagination, so it like pulls you in some. And just like, the way they're putting things together, like Come Right on Me, I mean camaraderie,
Mhm.
like that whole thing, just putting that together. Where art thou? Why not? Uponeth me is witty as hell. I heard you like magic. I got a wand and a rabbit. Like these are Eminem-esque
Mm.
like things that they've put together. My current favorite song out right now is Good Luck Babe,
Okay.
covered by Sabrina Carpenter, specifically the BBC Radio 1
Whoa.
version. You can find it on YouTube.
Okay, yeah, I
It's
don't
great.
think I've heard that version because
It's great because
is it
she
it's
took it
live,
in,
right? It was her performing.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and she took it in like a direction where like it's soulful. At times, it's kind of like country-ish.
Mm.
I just think like they're very talented. You think about, I'm sure you probably doom scroll TikTok and Reels and shit too, right?
Instagram, but yeah.
Yeah. And you see a lot of clips from her, Sabrina Carpenter, when she's touring and she's finishing nonsense. And in every city, she's got like a different little freestyle that she's doing. And it feels like they're having fun. It feels like they're pushing boundaries. They're being
Yeah,
creative. And as a father of girls, I want them to feel like they can do that. And they're, I hope I'm wrong, but they're not always going to be around men who feel the
right.
way I do about that. So I very much try to support that and instill that. Like I'm one of those guys, like my daughters love me. My oldest daughter
Sorry,
is
the way you said that,
yeah,
I was like, wait a minute. If you
yeah,
have
no,
to say it now, I don't believe you, but
no,
I
no.
believe you.
So no, my daughters love me. My oldest daughter is like in love with me. Like I have set the standard
Oh,
that she will accept.
oh,
And that's what I continually try to do. The way I treat my wife is an
right.
example for
That's what
them.
you, yeah.
That the programs we put in front of them, the music, and so like, yeah, they hear curses,
Mhm.
whatever. I've given up a lot for these kids. I'm not going to give up fuck. So as we like try to bring them along in life and we see pop culture, my wife's very into pop culture. I am, just because the way it moves people, it makes them feel it's
Right.
good to stay aware of those things. I just think like I feel so old said, these young ladies are
Yeah.
really doing some cool stuff. I'll never go to a Sabrina Carpenter concert.
You can't say that because you have kids. You probably will.
My wife will. I'll be outside on the phone, like, I'm over here. I'm over. No, at the next light. At the next light. You're at the wrong gate.
But that's the thing. If you're enjoying this, like you should go with them because like that's the thing they'll always remember is like my dad was cool. My dad enjoyed He took us. He didn't sit begrudgingly with his arms crossed, not wanting to be there. Like he was cool. And
The next
I
time
think
Taylor goes on tour, I will take them and
that's the
I'll
one
go.
where I thought you would say you would sit out because it's so expensive that it's like,
No, but it would be a like let's splurge. It's like it's a one-time thing. Even
okay.
I mean, Sabrina Carpenter was just in Philly,
Hmm.
and I only recently learned about her like a couple
Oh,
of months ago. And,
oh. Well,
and
I
I
mean, to
saw,
be fair, I think a lot of the world did that. Like, I mean, I knew of her from the TV shows that she did because, like,
yeah,
I covered TV. So, like, she was the Girl Meets World kid. And I was like, okay, she's the sidekick friend. Like, she's a good actor,
yeah.
whatever. And then all of a sudden she exploded. And I was like, oh, so she did something that I don't think even Disney Channel stars a couple of years ago could have successfully done. I don't know how she broke that mold. I mean, you could argue Miley Cyrus also broke the mold a bit, but like there are a lot of them that I think have tried to do what they're doing and have not been able to. And I
Yeah.
can't put my finger on why, but I was fascinated when I saw just how big Sabrina started to grow, how quickly.
All I knew
Probably
was
doesn't feel quick to her, so apologies to her.
all I knew about her was she was the other girl in the Olivia Rodrigo song.
That too. Okay, yeah.
That's all I knew. And because that song was on so much, I was like, this is annoying. And if I wrote a song about driving past my ex-girlfriend's house, someone would call the police.
That's
Double
fair.
standard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say we've talked about that on different episodes about like the standards that we have. I will say that it's not that I don't think it was creepy. I just think that the sound of the music makes it less creepy. Like
Yeah.
if that was a rap song, it would sound a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's a big part of it too, is maybe it is them knowing how to play with the genre and how to play with honestly like the different beats in the genre so that you're not pushed into a bubble of like pop that we dismiss, but still can play with these things without being called out for certain things.
And I think, going back to a certain extent, it doesn't matter what you say, it
Mm.
matters what you feel. I'm an almost 40-year-old man. These girls are singing about, chaperones talking about meeting another woman.
Mhm.
Um, Sabrina Carpenter's singing about the actor she dates, I forget his name. And but like there's a little bit of that. I'm a kind of a hopeless romantic. There's a little bit when I hear that where it's like, remember the butterflies in your stomach when you would, you know, I'm starting to think I only want one number in my phone. Gonna change your contact to don't leave me alone. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm sappy, but I think it makes people feel something. I
Yeah.
respect that. Um, and so and they're incredibly talented. And so if they can be a positive example for my daughters while also like I like the music,
Yeah.
I think they're super talented. And I think there's a lot to learn from, and now like we're all not trying to be stars, right? And yes, like I have a book out that I'm promoting, so like kind of public, but if you just take like the drive and the way they're trying to push things in
Right.
your day-to-day job, you can go a lot of places that don't have to be on a global tour. You just like you find that in your world where you're comfortable and
Yeah.
you can do your thing. And there's you know it's kind of like that life's 10% what happens to you, 90% how you handle it.
Yeah.
Like, they're finding ways to innovate.
Yeah, definitely that. I do think it is harder sometimes to look at like, as I just said, Sabrina, it felt like it was fast, like how much success she had, but like really she's been working at this for at least a decade, so it isn't fast. I think that's where it's hard sometimes for normal people to take it and to apply it because they don't realize just how much they're doing. They
It
don't
takes
see.
a really long time to become an overnight success.
Yeah, like no one sees like the stacks of notebooks she probably has with like lyrics she has rejected or how
Yeah.
many times, how many hours she was in a booth like getting the right harmony on a song or getting, the right beat or
Yeah.
whatever
And
mix.
I'm really into stand-up comedy too.
Mm.
You can go
Yeah,
online,
even that's a great example.
you can find Larry the Cable Guy as just a dude, not like playing this character. I remember my dad telling me stories of like him going to comedy clubs like in New York and seeing the person who became Andrew Dice Clay. But he
Right.
wasn't like he didn't have the cigarette and the gloves. Like it takes a long time to become an overnight success. And if you stick with it, like whether it be in entertainment, in music, or just like in your day to day, like be the best account manager you could be, the
Right.
best, accountant, whatever it may be. And along that way, if you find like some new way to do it, it'll save you time. You'll feel good about yourself. Maybe you become a thought leader in your field.
Yeah. And I mean, also, like, I also said at the start of this conversation, like, my question was, why the book now. And you very rightly was like, well, I've been working on it for a long time. Because like literally all of these things, even if you want to do it, I come from this world of like, I want to do it and I want to do it now. And so if I
Yeah.
were in your shoes, I probably would have
Hurry
said,
up and wait.
push
It's
it.
so,
And then I would have
it's
been upset that I did that. So
like there are times I've never yelled at anybody during this, but there are times where my wife has seen me. I'm just like, why isn't everyone working as hard as I am at
yeah.
this? And it's bound to happen. But my thing, especially like coming out of doing the book, is nobody's going to work as hard for you as you are.
Oh, that.
Now, and if they do, you're doing something wrong because for yourself, you have an extra gear. You have an extra something you will do for yourself that someone else won't do. And you just have to figure out if you're going to find that.
Yeah. It's interesting because my brain immediately went to they might be working just as hard as you. They just have different levels of what that looks like.
Yeah.
Because that's something that I've really struggled with. My efficiency and my speed is not everyone else's. And so it's like it doesn't mean they're not working hard. It just means like I have to like level set my own expectation.
Yeah.
And that's a
I struggle.
hard, it's a
I struggle
whole
with that.
separate conversation. I could do a whole podcast on like let us all reset and like change our standards just a little bit to give each and I keep saying this like I don't do it and I should give each other more grace. Like people keep coming on the
Yeah.
podcast and talking about that and I'm like, yep, I should do that. I never do. I never remember to.
Yeah. It's something I'm working on. Because I work for a tech company. So like I'm in C-level meetings.
I would say it's different in that world versus in
Yeah.
publishing. Yeah.
So like I'm in C-level executives dealing with them 9 to 5. I'm writing a book, I'm promoting a book, I'm dealing with all that.
Yeah.
I'm also this year running for public office. So I'm dealing with the
Yeah, well,
Democratic
you did that
Party.
to yourself.
Yeah. So
You
like I'm
could have
dealing
given
with
yourself a few hours off.
I know like today, as we call it, my wife calls this a 3-job day
Yeah.
because I did work. I had to do stuff for Susie. I'm doing this. And, but those are 3 different worlds I'm in, 3 different groups of people I have to work with who have different expectations. And all I want to do is be successful. And trying to figure out how to balance those and the personalities is something that, like, I struggle with every day. I think once you can be like, oh, I've got this, like, no, you don't. We're always trying to improve.
Right. Well, we should be.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
It was
So
great to meet you.
you too,
And
and a stray dog for Christmas. Obviously, I'm gonna do a little outro, but like, where do
yeah.
you want people to get it? Because I know there are a lot of book places. What is your choice place?
So, kind of the biggest question I get from people is, where do you get the most money if I buy it
That's
from
kind
you?
of what I'm asking
Yeah, it's all the
without
same.
phrasing it that way. Okay.
It's all the same. It's a Stray Dog for Christmas. It's available wherever books are sold. StrayDogForChristmas.com has just like all the links where you can go. Target, Walmart, Barnes and Noble, Amazon. My one request is wherever you get it, leave a review, a 5-star review. If it's not a 5-star review, don't leave one. And I just I think it's a great story. It's really fun for kids because it's a good, I believe it's a well-written story. That's what the reviewers are telling me. But also like there's a QR code in the back that you can scan and it goes to Susie's link tree. You go to her Instagram. So kids get to see this book. There's
Right.
before and after pictures of Susie. And then you get to see like she's a real thing. She's
Right.
here every day. She's on the other side of the room there napping. So, if you've got children in your life or you're just interested in a good story, A Stray Dog for Christmas, available wherever books are sold. They're in Barnes and Nobles and Walmarts, like physically across the country.
Cool. I mean, I love that those even still exist because I say that all the time when I'm listing places to get books. I'm like, if you're lucky enough to have a bookstore in your neighborhood, go
Yeah.
there. And I'm like, I don't know who is listening that does. I mean, I live in LA. We barely have bookstores here, and we are a major metropolitan city.
Yeah. I will say, as a fellow New Yorker, I was in New York for work. And so like my publicist is like, just tell me whenever you're somewhere, because I travel for work. And I was going to New York for work, and she was like, can you go to the Union Square Barnes and Noble and sign books?
Oh,
And I was
nice.
just like, I would fucking love to. Like, because I dated my high school girlfriend lived in Brooklyn. I lived in the Bronx. We were at opposite ends, so we would meet in the city. And you're a broke high school kid, so sometimes you're just walking around Barnes and Noble or something, like just trying to hang out and talk and whatever. So like I killed a lot of time in that Barnes and
Yes.
Noble, and now I had to go in there and sign books.
Yeah, I will say mine was a Borders, which doesn't exist anymore, but close enough, close enough. So as Jack said, you can find his book, A Stray Dog for Christmas, wherever books are sold, but you can also go to astraydogforchristmas.com to see those links to see more of Susie and Jack and their other dog, George's stories. But that's not all we discussed. He had a childhood turned adult love of wrestling. He kept saying WWF. That is what it was at the time he was younger. It is now WWE. And as he already teased, you can find those matches, past and present, available to stream on Peacock. Then he talked about a number of musicians, current musicians like Taylor Swift and Beyonce, Chappell Roan, Sabrina Carpenter, and you can find their music wherever music is available, places like Amazon and Apple. None of these places are paying me to list them as where I'm telling you to find these things. I'm just doing that so that you have an easier time actually finding these things. So once again, this has been made possible by Pop Culture, the podcast, season 2. Please like, comment, subscribe, follow on social media, throw out an idea for something you want discussed or someone you want invited on, because we're still going strong. Come back next week for a brand new episode.